Welcome to the first part of our journey into existentialism and the search for meaning. I'm Shamim, and today we begin with a question that has echoed through human history, and maybe even through your own sleepless nights. What gives life meaning? Picture this. You wake up one morning and suddenly ask yourself, what's the point of all this? Not out of despair, necessarily, but out of a deep, unsettling curiosity. That question, simple yet seismic, has haunted philosophers, poets, and ordinary people for centuries. Let me take you back to a night in college. I had just submitted a big paper. By all accounts, I should have felt proud, relieved, even. But instead, I felt hollow. I sat in that dim dorm room, staring at the ceiling, wondering, is this it? Am I just checking off boxes on a path someone else laid out for me? Is there something deeper I'm missing? That moment cracked something open. It sent me spiraling into books, into conversations, into late-night thought storms. Eventually, it led me here, to existentialism, a philosophical movement that doesn't hand you answers, but dares you to ask the right questions. In this 5-part series, we're going to explore those questions together. And in part 1, we'll trace the roots of the search for meaning, how this question first found its way into philosophy, and what some of the earliest existential thinkers had to say about it. So, stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you might not just understand existentialism. You might begin to understand yourself. Albert Camus, the French philosopher and novelist, opens his essay The Myth of Sisyphus with these striking words. There is only one really serious philosophical question, and that is suicide. What he meant wasn't that we should contemplate ending our lives, but rather that we must decide whether life is worth living at all. Camus introduced us to the concept of the absurd, the conflict between our human desire for meaning and purpose and the silent, indifferent universe that offers none. Consider the Greek myth of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a mountain only to watch it roll back down and to repeat this task for eternity. For Camus, this was the perfect metaphor for human existence. We build careers, relationships, and achievements, yet ultimately face mortality and the question of whether it all matters. Let me tell you about Sarah, a former student of mine. Sarah had followed all of society's rules: good grades, prestigious university, high-paying corporate job. On paper, she had made it. Yet at 35, she found herself sitting in her corner office feeling utterly empty, wondering if this was all there was to life. This is what existentialists call the void, that moment when you look at the life you've built and still feel something fundamental is missing. When the structures that once provided meaning suddenly seem hollow. But here's where existentialist philosophy offers something revolutionary. This void isn't something to fear. It's the beginning of authentic existence. Existence precedes essence. This phrase, coined by Jean-Paul Sartre, is perhaps the most important concept in existentialist thought. What does it mean? Traditional philosophy and religion often assumed that humans have a predetermined essence or purpose, like a knife is made to cut or a heart is made to pump blood. Existentialists turned this idea on its head. They argued that we exist first and only afterward do we define what we are. Think about it this way. When you were born, you weren't born with an instruction manual. There was no cosmic voice saying, this is what your life should be. Instead, you were thrown into existence, and through your choices and actions, you gradually define who you are. Let me share another story. My friend Miguel grew up in a family with generations of doctors. Everyone expected him to become a doctor too. He went through medical school feeling increasingly trapped and miserable. It wasn't until he was 30 that he realized medicine wasn't his calling. It was music. The existentialist would say Miguel was living inauthentically, trying to fulfill an essence others had created for him. After a painful period of soul-searching, Miguel left medicine and became a composer. Today, he creates film scores that move millions. He had to reject the predetermined essence others had assigned him and forge his own path through his choices. This idea is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means there's no cosmic blueprint for your life. Liberating because it grants you the freedom to create meaning rather than discover it. With this radical freedom comes something equally important: responsibility. If we're not following a predetermined path, then we're responsible for the paths we choose. Sartre put it starkly. We are condemned to be free. Condemned because we can't escape the burden of choice. Even refusing to choose is itself a choice. Here's where existentialism becomes deeply personal. When I was 28, I was offered a prestigious job that would have meant financial security but also meant compromising some of my core values. I agonized over the decision for weeks. What made it difficult wasn't just weighing pros and cons. It was the realization that I couldn't blame anyone else for my choice. Not my parents, not society, not economic circumstances. The final decision would be mine, and I would have to live with the consequences. This sense of responsibility extends beyond our personal lives. Existentialists argue that when we choose, we're not just choosing for ourselves but affirming what we believe humans should be. Your choices create a statement about what you think is valuable in human existence. This is why authenticity becomes so crucial in existentialist thinking. To live authentically is to acknowledge your freedom, make conscious choices, and take responsibility for them rather than following what Heidegger called the anonymous public consensus about how one should live. If all this talk of radical freedom and responsibility sounds anxiety-inducing, that's because it is. Existentialists didn't shy away from the emotional challenges of human existence. In fact, they saw emotions like anxiety, despair, and even dread as important signals. Søren Kierkegaard, often considered the first existentialist philosopher, though he wouldn't have used that term, described anxiety as the dizziness of freedom. When you stand at the edge of a cliff, you feel vertigo not just from the fear of falling, but from the awareness that you could choose to jump. We often try to escape this anxiety by surrendering our freedom to others, following traditions blindly, doing what everyone else does, or letting authorities make our choices for us. But existentialists argue that facing this anxiety is essential to living authentically. I remember when my father passed away unexpectedly. Beyond the grief, I felt a profound anxiety about mortality, not just fear of death, but the realization that my time is finite and I need to choose how to use it. It was uncomfortable, even painful, but that anxiety prompted me to reevaluate what truly mattered in my life. We've covered a lot of ground today: the absurd nature of existence, the precedence of existence over essence, our radical freedom and responsibility, and the anxiety that comes with it. These might seem like heavy concepts, but they're the groundwork for something profoundly life-affirming. In part 2 of our series, we'll explore how existentialists moved beyond these challenging realizations to find meaning through concepts like commitment, passion, and creative rebellion. We'll look at how philosophers like Nietzsche and Camus found ways to say yes to life despite its inherent meaninglessness. Until then, I invite you to notice moments in your day when you're making choices automatically without reflection. Ask yourself, am I choosing this, or am I letting others choose for me? Or might I be avoiding the anxiety of freedom? Thank you for joining me on this philosophical journey. If you found value in today's exploration, please like this video and subscribe for the upcoming parts in this series. And share in the comments your own thoughts about meaning and existence. I read every comment. Until next time, remember that in the search for meaning, the journey itself might be the destination. So this is where we'll pause for now, but it's only the beginning of a much deeper journey. Not just into philosophy, but into yourself. If today's questions sparked something in you, a memory, a doubt, a quiet realization, then you're already walking the existential path. And this series is here to walk it with you. In the next parts, we'll go further. We'll explore rebellion, creativity, love, death, and how to live meaningfully in a world that offers no guarantees. So if this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Don't miss what's coming next. And if any part of this video made you stop and think, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions, your story. Until next time, stay curious, stay courageous, and remember, in the search for meaning, the journey itself might be the destination.